USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to another Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We are live first Mondays of every month. My name is Andre. I'm with USA EBN, and I'm joined on the Zeta Report by Nancy Leader from Zeta Talk. Nancy, are you there?
I am, and I'm excited to talk. You know, something that we have never talked about. We say, here's how you generate electricity. Here's how you get clean drinking water. Here's how we've taken things, saving seeds. We've taken things in pieces, but we don't talk about bug-out bags. There are so many things that need to be included in your bug-out bag, and we have never talked about that. So that's what I want to talk about today, basic necessities. Before we rip into that, let me just read our standard disclaimer. In partnership with USA EBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit zetatalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. What are the basic necessities going into a catastrophe? First, how to determine when the catastrophe might strike. For instance, a big earthquake. We have stressed that a simple radio will warn you with its static for days before a quake strikes. This is due to the electronic screech that flows through the rock below you. So have that battery-operated radio at hand. This is an absolute fact. I got this from people. We went out to California after the Loma Prieta in 1989, and I talked to people who said when you went by the epicenter to the 2 days ahead of that 7.9 strike hitting, you couldn't get the radio to work in your car. You know, and I've heard that repeatedly. It's such a small thing. Have it be battery operated in case the electricity goes out. You can have that baby sitting on your kitchen cabinet, you know, listening to some background music, and when you can't get the background music, Earthquake clouds are another warning sign of a pending quake. Nervous pets that want to flee also. Earthquake clouds form strips in the sky caused by emissions from the stressed rock below. They are a distinctive signature. The electronic screech from rock causes distressed pets and domestic animals to want to flee. Of course, if you don't have a pet, you know, just remember to glance up. I've seen them here in Wisconsin, and they are very distinctive. We have a rip in Wisconsin from Green Bay down to Madison. We're being pulled apart, big rip. If you live where a tsunami or storm tide can strike, an inflatable boat might be a basic necessity. These are not expensive items. Remember the broken levees after Katrina? All those folks on rooftops without a way to get to dry land? A simple inflatable boat and a set of paddles would make all the difference. Just tuck them, you know, even if you want to tuck them up in your attic or close to the roof. Why not? What are we talking about? Under $20? Nothing. Let's say the flood lingers, as they so often do. Where can you cobble together floating trash to make a makeshift houseboat? But how to fish? A basic necessity for everyone, but especially those living in areas that might flood, are fish hooks, fish line, and perhaps nets. I mean, fish hooks in a little box. I bought a box full of 100 for $1.89. You know, that was 20 years ago, but they don't go bad. How would you make a fish hook? You know, out of a hairpin? Eh, you know, tricky if you don't have them. So get them, along with your inflatable boat and paddles. Don't forget the duckweed. That pea-green little salad item that floats on ponds is very high in protein, as is seaweed, very nutritional. Should you be lucky enough to be close to land in order to barter with landlubbers, fill some empty buckets with good soil and grow tomatoes and strawberries on your houseboat. And don't forget to catch the rainwater on your tarp roof for salt and pollution-free drinking water. So what they're suggesting is have a couple plastic buckets around. You're cobbling together your houseboat, fill them with soil. Don't get distracted. You don't need those video games. You don't need those high heel shoes. You need that good soil so that you can grow strawberries and tomatoes. And you should have seed, too. That's another basic item. Another basic item is first aid kit and book on basic steps like stitching up a wound or setting a broken bone or assisting with a breech delivery. Books are another inexpensive item and should absolutely be among your basic essentials. The Travel Times info hosted on the Zeta Talk websites recommends many such books as When There Is No Doctor, When There Is No Dentist, Special Forces Medical Handbook, Ship's Captain Medical Guide, Emergency War Surgery, Ditch Medicine, and the Book for Midwives, a manual for traditional birth attendants and midwives. Can make all the difference. I mean, they have diagrams, and they're dealing with these extreme emergencies like someone bleeding to death or a toothache that just won't stop. Yow. Where never mentioned when the bug-out bag is being discussed is the necessity of the venerable toothbrush. Imagine being without month after month. It is beyond tooth decay and teeth falling out from bleeding gums. It is living with munge mouth. Likewise, a nail file and clipper. You may be able to bite your fingernails off, but what about those toenails? Such a small item and so necessary. Toss in a comb and brush and some hairpins, too, and you will thank yourself forever. Small things, but imagine yourself without. That's my rule of thumb. Just imagine yourself without that, although I guess you can make a toothbrush out of practically anything. You could take take a stick and kind of fray the end, and then go in there after, so it's possible if you can be inventive. But, toothbrush fit in your pocket, you'd be so happy to have that. Another basic item likely overlooked by almost everyone is a shortwave radio. This is the standard communication route for emergency services. If your phone lines are down and you have no way to reach emergency services or even get the news, shortwave radio. And it should be either battery operated or get a crank radio. I have one of those. So you don't have to worry about dead batteries. These radios do require a short antenna, but a fishing line cast up above the brush can carry a wire high enough. I personally have seen that done. What are we going to do for an antenna? And the guy took a fish and slung it up into the trees, and it hung up there, and that was his antenna, and that worked. If truly devastated and out in the woods, one can start a fire, but how to boil water or make soup? A staple in camping equipment is a set of pots and pans that can fold into each other to take up scarcely any space. Else you are limited to pieces of this or that on a stick held over the fire. Truly, these little things, it's about as big as a hip pocket Once you fold it all up, to 35 pots and pans, fold, telescope into each other is what they do, and snap, and now they don't fall and clank around. So otherwise, you stick a stick through a piece of meat, from the rabbit that you managed to club to death, and that's all you can have. You can't make soup, you can't boil water, certainly can't make tea. Tuck a bag of salt in with your pots and pans, too, for any favorite spice you just can't live without. Why not? You're thinking about basic necessities, putting together that bug-out bag. With a lack of electricity to run your hand tools, how to build a new shelter from junk or repair a broken piece of furniture. Hand tools can be found in yard sales or barns and can even be purchased on the internet. No electricity required. Thus, I include them in the list of basic necessities. What are you going to do? How are you going to saw a board if you don't have a handsaw? I used to plug this in and it worked, but now it doesn't work anymore. So the guy that has hand tools in the village, he's the hero. A pocket or folding knife would also be handy in case one is caught in barbed wire fencing while traveling overland or needs to cut off a length of rope. What else would you need besides that? What would you use besides that folding knife? Your teeth. I only need a foot of rope. Not good for the teeth. No. Probably doesn't taste good either. Needles and thread. What about repairing clothing that might start falling apart? Did you forget to pack a needle and thread in your bag of basic necessities? I'll bet most men would. Most women might think of it. Like fish hooks, needles, and I'm sorry to be so sexist, but it's just a fact. Like fish hooks, needles are easy and cheap to buy now, but impossible to manufacture later. Steel, how would you do that? I guess you could do it, but it would be a big hole. You'd have to, take a bone and drill a hole on one end? So much easier to pack a needle and thread. If there are sheep nearby and you remember to include some knitting needles and a basic book on knitting techniques, then you can also knit scarves, blankets, and hoodies. All the items on the basic necessities list are inexpensive and easy to carry, and knitting needles, you don't want to poke yourself, but they run like a foot long, and I've knitted, and it's a wonderful occupation, very soothing. And if you have wool, you can twill off, some yarn, and then do a 3-ply thing, and then start knitting, and before you know it, give yourself a holiday gift this 2020 season and fill up your basic necessities box. You won't regret it. I've heard it from a military man that one should wear wool socks if expecting to be slogging about in the wetlands. Wool lets the air in, thus keeps the foot dry, thus evades fungus and other foot rot problems. In general, for clothing for the bug-out bag, wool should come first, even if you expect to be sweating. It dries on the body and keeps the body warm even when wet. And speaking of basic necessities, a tarp is certainly such an item. Versatile and inexpensive. If you find yourself on land with your home blown over and without camping gear, the tarp can be an instant tent. It can also create an eating and seating area for your group out in the rain. Just sit underneath the tarp. And before we get off the subject of starting a wood fire for heat or to make the evening meal, we need to include a couple more items in the basic necessities list. One might run out of matches, but hold on to that Bic lighter. The flint will last forever and can spark a fire with or without fuel in the Bic. And don't forget how easy it is to start a campfire the old-fashioned way, by friction. Halcon is an expert at this, and I highly recommend his book, The Halcon Hand Drill, out there on the internet. Just Google Halcon, and dingo, you're right there. He shows step-by-step how to work a bow or hand drill, and voila, there is the smoke for the bit of tinder you have at the ready. Speaking of crank electricity, you may also find yourself off the grid, and soon without working batteries. Now sitting in the dark, but wait, there are a few more basic necessities that could turn the lights on. Almost everyone has an old bike in the garage or barn, or in the neighborhood, and this can be rigged to make a BikeGen. Get a battery from one of the idle cars and link up a 12-volt direct current rig powered by a churning bike, rear wheel up on a block with a chain attached to an alternator from the car. As long as you keep on pumping, the battery is being charged. Car batteries are 12-volt, as most camping gear is also, and all cars use an alternator. You're all set. You'll be the wise man who comes and saves everybody from the dark, and you will become beloved. To generate power, one needs motion and an alternator, which contains a magnetic coil that generates an electric flow from motion. Alternators can be found in cars and in many electric appliances, such as electric drills. To charge a battery from a bike crank or homemade windmill, simply reverse the process. Instead of electricity turning a device, where the electric flows in, the device generates the electric flow, so the electric flows out to the battery. Most electric devices around the home use alternating current, as this is what comes out of the wall. The switch to alternating current was done when long-distance distribution was desired, as direct current only goes a stretch of 50 feet or so before it drops in strength. Thus, you eventually put up a windmill, you will need to have your batteries nearby. All car and truck batteries are direct current batteries, and all camping equipment uses direct current also. So there's your head start, and you got a rig, you get your windmill up, you got your batteries charging. Oh, and you're going to be beloved of those that are no longer sitting in the dark. Examples of homemade windmills can then be made from junk at hand are the lawnmower windmill, because lawnmower ready, it comes with an alternator already in there, and cutting blades. It can be made, from the blades of the lawnmower. They can be converted to catch the wind. So there you are, catch the wind. Now you got the alternator coming out of the wind. The lawnmower is electricity for the batteries. The Nebraska windmill design is another easily made from junk. Dig a trench and place the windmill so it is half above the ground, half below. As the wind pushes the flaps above ground, those below ground rise up to catch the wind again. But you don't want the kitties or the kittens or whomever or the cows to walk into that. So in Nebraska, they have a fence around their Nebraska windmills. This removes the worry of having to climb high to install or maintain the windmills, but adds a worry about how to keep wandering cows from falling into the ditch. The Savonius design is another that takes up little space and spins at the slightest breeze, just like a child's pinwheel toy. These beautiful windmills can be seen occasionally along country roads, standing like corkscrews, upright or laid horizontally. You can, of course, build these from trash. There are alternatives to wind, such as solar panels, if you have them, and water can be established, a water mill. You can build a water mill from something as simple as, will it never stop raining, and here's the gutters draining and draining. Guess what? You can put a little water mill down there with a rig of Tupperware, and it goes around and around like a little Ferris wheel, and sure enough, attached to an alternator from an electric drill. And, it might be a slow process, but why waste this? It works. I know it works. I know someone out in California who built one and put pictures on the web, on my Troubled Times website, that works. One assumes after a catastrophe that cooking dinner would happen over an open wood fire. But there are alternatives. Methane gas from manure works just like natural gas. I had an interview with someone who gathered methane from a barrel of manure, turning the spigot off and on as needed to cook his dinner. It rises to the top. He turned on the spigot, there's the gas, cooked his dinner, turned it off again, and it continued. And, the manure can be human manure, by the way. But this can be explosive, so care should be taken. Given the Zeta forecast that all oil and gas in the pipelines and refineries will be burned up during the coming geological changes, what to do to fuel the cars? Wood gas works and was used during World War II in Australia and Finland. The specs to retrofit your car are on the Troubled Times pages hosted by the Zeta Talk website. Search for wood gas. And the specs are there. Print them off. Now that ends my chatter about basic necessities. Andre, did I miss anything in your mind?
I don't think so. I think the biggest problem that a lot of people run into when they're making a bug-out bag or some sort of list for basic necessities that they're going to have at their location. The thing about the bug-out bag is you can put all kinds of stuff in it, but you're going to have to carry it. So, people are like, well, we throw everything in the kitchen sink in there, plus batteries, plus this, plus that. Okay, now you're up to 40 pounds. Now, okay, so while you're practicing for the end times of the disaster preparedness that you're doing and you're practicing, why don't you put on that bag that weighs 40 pounds and carry it around for 2-3 days and all the time, and tell me that you absolutely need all that stuff. So that's really the part that a lot of people struggle with, is like, do I absolutely need it or do I not need it? Well, here's a good rule of thumb. If it's something that you're using every day in your normal life, it might not necessarily be something that you will need in a situation. Needles and thread, for example. You don't think about that on a daily basis. Most people just take it to the dry cleaners and have them fix it, or alterations, or have an aunt or a grandma take care of it. But after the fact, like you said, it's like, what are you going to make a needle out of? You're going to, needles are made in factories, so are toothpicks, and toothbrushes and all these things. So when that goes down, you don't have those options, and you think, well, I'll just run to Walmart when the tsunami comes. And like, well, you're not the first one to think of that. So that Walmart, or box stores, I should say, are going to be all cleared out, if not closed, because there's no power. It's like, so waiting till the last minute, that kind of negates the whole point of preparedness. Preparedness is do it beforehand. It's more like an insurance policy. So
excellent.
But the problem is, I think that a lot of people run into is like trying to put too much stuff in there. Think about what you're going to need for 3 to 5 days to get to your location where you do have those supplies. So if that's a cabin in the woods or a trailer or a cave or whatever you got, that's where you want to have the stuff for the long term. The short term is your bug out bag, 2 to 3 days, 5 days maximum. You're going to want to put everything in there under the sun, and then you probably won't have what you need, like needle and thread.
And also, how big? For instance, an inflatable boat, I would put it in the upper floor of the house somewhere. Maybe not the attic, because you can't break a hole open. But, in an upstairs bedroom where you can bash the window open.
Not in the basement.
You don't need to be carting that around, or especially, car batteries and et cetera. I'm not sure how well they do in a flood, but the car is not going to go away. You can go and get that after the fact. But if you go through fish hooks, needle and thread, a crank radio, a shortwave radio, so that you can find out, which direction you should wander in to get to safety, for instance. Those are little. I mean, you could give them to your 3-year-old kid and say, here, carry this. So that would be another factor, like nail file, clippers, toothbrush. Those are tiny things. So you could sort it out like that. What things you don't need to take with you, but need to bear in mind that you might want to put somewhere where you know where it is. You can go for that old bike. You can go for that car battery or alternator. You can do that later, or the hand tools. You know where they are, and that's about all you need to do. Yeah, that's a very good point.
One thing One thing that I wanted to clarify, too, from my experience, and this I found out when I was actually swimming in the ocean. Bic lighters, right? Great idea. You can, even with there's no more butane in there, no more gas, you still have that flint. Then you can use the flint to make a spark and have tinder and, make your fire from there. Here's the problem with flint. Salt water, seawater especially, melts it. It dissolves in seawater. So flint, if you go to get it, fresh water's fine. But just like electronics and stuff like that, it corrodes the flint and breaks it apart. It's so small inside the thing that it no longer makes the contact with the wheel. So I found that out in Jamaica actually. So easy way to do there is just put it in a Ziploc, or have a lot of people have roll up waterproof bags. So that's where you want to put your documents, your paper stuff that you absolutely need, and stuff that you can't get wet, like tinder, your lighter, matches, that sort of thing. Dry socks. Wrap it all up in your wool socks. Put that in a Ziploc. Zip up 2 Ziplocs. I don't know. But water, and like you said about plan on getting wet, all right? Just plan on it.
Yeah.
Because you will.
Yeah. Excellent suggestion. Excellent. Yeah.
That's all I have, man. I'm going to give you the show back.
All right. The only thing that I wanted to add, we do have a little time left, 15 minutes or so, is I want to talk about that monolith in Utah, and things like that are showing. This is a fact, that they found that there. So I'm not giving you Zeta talk, prophecy.
Well,
I'm telling you what people are reporting in the news, right? In case
There's
anyone missed
monoliths.
Oh, yes.
There's many of them.
A massive metal monolith was discovered by a crew counting sheep in the Utah desert. It was 10 to 12 foot tall and had 3 sides, triangular. Smooth, so some people thought they could discern rivets along the sides. There was no way for a truck to deliver it, no roadways, and it was hidden. Where it was like 20-foot tall rock around it except for one side of that circle. You'd have to drop it by a helicopter or something. If it was dropped by human beings. A Utah highway patrolman put out a video asking for information on it and joked around. References to the movie Space Odyssey 2001 and the sentient computer HAL were made, but those of us who recall the humming boxes that were found along fault lines in 2012 had a hunch. Remember when those showed up? And they were like smooth boxes, no handles at all, but there was like a line around the bottom where you could see that the top part was supposed to lift off the base. The humming boxes had a mystique. If accidentally found, they tended to disappear. The U.S. government, and I mean, just whoops, where to go? The U.S. government came to retrieve one of them, but per reports could not open it, and then, of course, it disappeared. But at that time, the 7 of 10 plate movements predicted by the Zetas had been slowed down. Now, the Zetas made a prediction about plate movements in 2010, and they were to start in 2011, which they did in Indonesia, which all of a sudden had all kinds of sinking, which they called excessive rain, even though it was seawater coming in. How does that happen by rain? And it was supposed to move right along to the South America roll, and then where the top part of South America would lob over toward the Pacific, and then the African roll, where the top part of Africa would lob over and kind of fall into the Indian Ocean, and then we're going to wrap around and have the horrible New Madrid adjustment, which I talk about often. So why did the benign aliens want to slow down these 7 of 10 plate movements? Because Obama was president at that time and supposedly had the soul of Lincoln incarnated into his body. And he wanted to tell people about Nibiru. He wanted to announce it. We got around to the fall of 2015, and we had Jade Helm with Dunford in charge up there. Love that man. Anyway, no announcement from Obama. And they were all set for riots in the United States and all that. And per the Zetas, Obama chickened out. He lacked courage, is the way they put it. So the humming boxes were to give Obama some time to get that done, because the whole thing with the pole shift is that it's a huge spiritual opportunity, according to the Zetas, for people to rise to the occasion and help other people, or become very, very selfish, and go into their bunkers and say, I don't care if you and your little babes in arms drowned or die, I've got mine. It's a chance, to rise up or sink lower. So, quoting the AP News, a mysterious silver monolith that was placed in the Utah desert has disappeared less than 10 days after it was spotted by wildlife biologists performing a helicopter survey of bighorn sheeps. The monolith has been removed from Bureau of Land Management public lands by an unknown party. The agency did not remove the structure, while Utah officials did not say specifically where the monolith was located. People soon found it on satellite images dating back to 2016 and determined its GPS coordinates, prompting people to hike into that area, and did they ever. And we had copycats rising up. We had copycats in Romania, where all of a sudden, blink, there it is. And of course, they want the tourists, and it's at a popular tourist destination that's up on top of a hill. If out in Utah it was hidden, it certainly was hidden. This one in Romania, you could see it from 50 miles away, as the one in California. You could see it 50 miles away. So, they were not trying to hide this, and they claimed, this is an art project or this or that, but there's always some monetary or fame interest. But not to be left out, here come the Russians. I heard this from the Russians. Tula University in Russia was running according to them, a teleportation experiment, and that's their device. All these monoliths that pop up and then disappear, it's at their hand. They were the ones who were doing it. And by the way, Tula University has their monolith up on a hill, seen from 50 miles away, and of course it's a popular tourist destination. Quoting the Zetas on what they have to say about all this. In the opinion of the Zetas, when the Utah monolith appeared, the story was featured on the media and the spread on the internet. What followed instantly were the tourists who came along distances and hiked over difficult terrain. Romania has few tourists and quickly mocked up a replica, hoping that such a tourist attraction would soon arrive with their dollars. Then there are those whose job it is to deny the alien presence. They filmed a fake story about removal of the Utah monolith and showed construction of a copycat in California. Now that the original monolith has been removed, there can be no authentication via a comparison or metal type of construction technique. Any old box made out of scrap metal will do. But both the Romania copycat and the California copycat had one thing in common. They were placed on high ground and very much out in the open, visible from miles away, just asking for attention. Why would aliens who normally leave no trace of their activity or presence do that? End of the quote from the Zetas. So moving along about, are we really stopped? Is the New Madrid adjustment halted at present? You know, many people noted, I was following 6 months ago, oh, where are the quakes? Oh, look at the quakes there in Kansas. Oh, look at the, and here and there, and we were saying, brace yourself, here it comes. And the Zetas had even said by the end of 2020, FEMA will be busy with the New Madrid and martial law. Well, we're awful close to the end of 2020. So, Hard Rock,
the start of,
even
last month we were talking about hot spots and all these hot spots on the bend in Ramapo and and
it's been on the because it's going to be, we're really going to tear the North American continent into pieces. The whole southeastern part of the continent, the continent is going to go down to this and create a huge void in the Atlantic, and it's the tsunamis that are going to bound out toward Europe and the East Coast, and to say nothing of all these cities running up Memphis all the way up, to Chicago will have a lot of damage. And then it turns, the fault line does, and runs under the seaway, in Cincinnati and all these, Ohio and all the way up to the New England states. And the last time in 1811-12, it rang church bells in Boston because it ran up the East Coast, too, along the fault line there. And so all of these cities, they have not been retrofitted. Like the West Coast is, we have the San Andreas, we have to retrofit, so that on the eastern half of the United States, it's like, oh no, we're good. We're not in earthquake territory. Oh yes, you are. So, what are the signs, that we have stopped the progress? Is there distress in South America? Is there distress in Africa? I'm here to tell you about the distress. The start of the New Madrid fault line unzipping began in October 2019 when the Hard Rock Hotel collapsed in New Orleans. After that, quakes started moving up through the soft sedimentary rock between New Orleans and the town of New Madrid. Quakes occurred in Kansas and Tennessee as well. Steady progress was palpable, but then by February 2020, the North American continent appeared to have locked. No further New Madrid-related earthquakes being recorded, though stress in the rock became obvious, like the hot spots, etc., that we talked about a month ago. Sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxide were leaking from the rock, and radar detection of arcing between the states bordering the Mississippi was recorded. These are signs that the adjustment was being delayed, and the appearance of the Utah monolith is an admission of that fact. Why the delay? The Zetas had earlier stated that the New Madrid adjustment would start in earnest by the end of 2020, stating, by the end of 2020, FEMA will have its hands full with the New Madrid and martial law. In the opinion of the Zetas, the Council of Worlds wants the 2020 election mess in the U.S. to be settled before the New Madrid chaos starts. Can you imagine all that ripping and chaos to start right now when we have the whole thing with election fraud, and I won't go into that, but what? How many millions of votes swapped from Trump to Biden? That's the only thing I'm going to say. All right, So if the New Madrid is being held back, does this result in stress for the South America roll? During the South America roll, the top bulbous part of the continent is pulled and pushed to the west, and thus bends around the Nazca Plate. During this bend, a new bay in Buenos Aires is starting to form. But the great Amazon River is the weak point in the continent, and thus is likewise pulling apart. And there it is, continuous tension these past few weeks at the mouth of the Amazon, where Brazil's Amapá state has sustained a 2-week power outage. They show this on video. They try to get the electricity, okay, crank it up, and everything fries. I mean, can you imagine EMP on a daily 24/7 basis? Yeah. They get the power back on, and within seconds it all fries again. This continuous tension, which can only be resolved when the South America roll completes, will not abate, so if the South America roll is held back, Amapá has no lights, apparently. Next on the 7 of 10 plate movements is the Africa roll, which likewise shows signs of stress from being held back. For instance, at the Bight of Biafra, that's what they call it, in the Gulf of Guinea, a bunch of little islands coming down. Some people call that the armpit of Africa, but anyway, it's squeezed as the African roll tries to lob over to the east, the top part. That part gets squeezed as though you're pulling your arm toward your body. This seismographic blip has been around for decades, but has just come up on the media recently because it has gotten stronger. Considered a mystery, the seismographic blip is not caused by earthquakes or volcanic activity, but is as irregular as clockwork every 26 seconds on back through the eons. No kidding. In the opinion of, and quoting the Zetas, we have described the flow of magma under the hardened rock surfaces, as not unlike the mountain ranges up on top of the surface. It has been reported that the Bight of Bani, or Biafra, blips are stronger when there are storms on the surface creating wave action, and even the tugging on the continent of Africa as moving air masses can cause. This blip is a periodic release of magma from a pocket where heavy parts of the magma accumulate and cause what can be called a type of earthquake there as a result. The heavy magma is released and the accumulation starts all over again. So that magma swirling about, it's increased, and there are signs, if you look for them, that these giant continents that are part of the 7 of 10 plate movements are distressed. So, no new Madrid by the end of this year, so we can all sigh relief. But heaven knows, if we get the 2020 election resolved, maybe the foot will come off the brake, and then you will need those basic necessities. And I'm talked out, right. Andre.
All right. Well, I tell you what, if obviously we have worldwide viewers and listeners, but in the United States here, we're struggling to get through counting votes, and that's all I'm going to say there.
Yeah, that's right. I could talk for
do your own research there for real. I mean, we've been suggesting that the turning off the television for quite some time around here, so just have fun with the family over the holidays and be careful.
Yes, and get that shortwave radio, that crank radio, and put aside the nail clipper, the nail file, the needle and thread, and the Bic lighter in a Ziploc bag, and a book on when there is no doctor, etc. It's small. These things are small. Static, put that radio, AM, FM radio, battery operated if you want, in the kitchen. Listen to the music in the background. If you hear something's up. And stay safe. Yep.
Yeah, also with that too, with the earthquake predictors, don't forget the animals. The animals are going to tell you when they freak out and start running.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Especially the smaller ones and dogs, You said ducks.
Yes.
Ducks are very in tune.
Taking ducks, I had one that had a fit, and Chicago had a 4.5, and for 2 days ahead of that, quack, 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 quack. And I'd hold her, and I'd sing to her, and nothing would calm her. That earthquake hit, and nothing in the house even rattled, but she just stopped. She was content. So you hear. And there was a guy, Berglund, I think his name was, he was an earthquake predictor from the West Coast. He said he watched the missing pet columns. If all kinds of dogs and cats went missing, he knew. That's it. You could tell the epicenter by that. You know, and earthquake clouds. All that stuff. Yeah. Here in Wisconsin, by the way, Andre, I think we have a hum. You know, I sit here quietly at 3 in the morning and I hear, and I used to think it was maybe the water in the pipes, you know, that vibrating the pipes or something, and I thought, what? But because you and I are in that stretch where Wisconsin is being pulled apart, I said, wait a minute, you've heard of Teo's hum? Or in Detroit has a hum? You know, places they say it sounds like a diesel engine or something running, you know. So watch for your signs.
Yes, absolutely. Keep an eye on the sky and feet on the ground and be ready to go with your bug-out bag, and you will be good to go.
Yes, I'm happy. I'm happy we
Awesome. Thanks again, Nancy.
Yes, thank you, Andre. Have a good day. Bye-bye.